Welcome back to Bookish Dives. We've done a few of these together now, haven't we? Getting into different books, trying to find those practical nuggets.
Yeah, the things you can actually use.
Exactly. And today, we're digging into one shared by one of you listening. Think Straight. Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life by Darius Foroux.
And what really jumps out, I think, is just how practical Foroux is trying to be here.
Right.
His whole point isn't some lofty philosophy. It's the idea that you can actually decide what you think about.
Actively decide.
Yes. And that ability, that single skill, is what can improve, well, pretty much everything else in your life.
Okay, so let's unpack that. It sounds simple, but not easy. He starts with this core idea.
Yeah.
You become what you think.
And he doesn't just throw it out there. He anchors it straight away with the story of William James.
The philosopher and psychologist.
That's him. Back in 1869, James was young, Harvard-educated, but really struggling. Deep depression, even thinking about suicide for months. Yeah. And he partly felt doomed, because his father had similar issues, so he thought maybe it was just biological destiny, hopeless.
Okay, but then something shifted. That's where it gets really interesting, right?
Exactly. In 1870, he reads this French philosopher, Charles Renouvier.
Renouvier, right.
And Renouvier defines free will as, and James writes this down, the sustaining of a thought because I choose to when I might have other thoughts.
Sustaining a thought because I choose to.
Right. Not stopping other thoughts from popping up, but choosing which ones to hold on to focus on.
And James decides to just try believing that for a year.
As an experiment, yeah. He called that decision itself his first act of free will. He realized he could steer his consciousness by choosing where to put his focus.
So that's the huge shift. It's moving away from, I can't help feeling this way,
to maybe I feel this way because I've decided to keep dwelling on the thoughts that make me feel this way.
It's reclaiming some agency over your inner world.
Exactly. It really echoes Emerson. You become what you think about all day long.
Right.
And Foroux's whole book builds on this. Practice this skill of directing your thoughts and your life quality, your career, everything gets better.
Because what you do starts with what you think. If you want different actions.
You got to start with the thoughts. Precisely.
But it sounds so simple, yet we all know it's incredibly hard. So why? Why do we need this practical thinking he talks about?
Well, he frames the brain as this amazing tool, right? Like Robert Greene says. Super powerful. But most of us, he argues, never really learned how to use it properly. We're often pretty impractical thinkers.
We think we're logical.
Yeah, we like to think that.
Right.
But then you look at the work of people like Dan Ariely.
Behavioral economics.
Right, and it shows our perception, our decisions, they're often guided way more by what we want to be true or our emotions than by, logic.
And we have proof, don't we? The book mentions cognitive biases.
Oh, absolutely. Science has identified, over 100 of them? These mental shortcuts, these systematic errors in how we think.
So a lot of the time we're deciding based on gut feel or emotions or just not having all the facts.
Exactly. And Foroux says this is why he wrote the book. He found other stuff on thinking, too. Well, theoretical. He wanted to offer at least one thing someone could actually do.
One actionable idea.
That was the goal. And he says, up front, the only requirement for you, the listener, is to be open-minded.
Use it or leave it.
Use or leave it. No point reading it or listening to us talk about it if you're already decided it won't work for you.
That use what works idea feels really central, and it comes from his own story, doesn't it?
It really does. He's very open about not being some academic guru. He's an entrepreneur, blogger, podcaster.
Someone who lived it.
Right. Someone who spent years feeling like his thoughts just happened to him, totally uncontrollable.
He paints a picture of being, ecstatic one day, crushed the next, easily angered, stressed, stuck.
Hating life, basically. That's how he puts it. And he says he got better not through some therapy program, but through experience. Journaling, reading, looking inward.
Learning to use his mind, not be its slave.
That's his definition of better thinking. It's not about IQ points. It's about being effective in your own life.
It connects to that pragmatist idea from John Dewey, right? The true is that which works.
Exactly. But Foroux adds a really important point there. It's not just believing whatever feels good or seems convenient. You still need to be grounded. Look at the facts, consider different viewpoints, then draw conclusions that are actually useful and practical.
So it's about real-world utility, not just wishful thinking.
Precisely. And doing that means seeing thinking as a skill, something that, like any skill, needs training.
The mind is a muscle analogy. We get going to the gym for our bodies.
But when do we intentionally train our minds after we finish school? We sort of stop.
And the book points out we naturally resist straining our minds, right? It's easier to just relax, watch Netflix.
Yeah, we prefer familiarity. But are we just avoiding the necessary effort of focused thought?
Makes you think. Epictetus said it ages ago. Clear thinking is not a haphazard enterprise. It requires proper training.
And Foroux describes his own past mind as just pure chaos, a complete mush of thoughts pulling him everywhere. He just wanted a pause button.
Didn't know how to use the tool he had.
Exactly. Which brings us to that story he tells about moving to London. It's so relatable.
Oh yeah, the apartment disaster.
Right. Everything planned, family flying in to help, and bam. Last minute, the landlady backs out, he's stuck.
And his first reaction is just meltdown, panic, blaming himself.
Total overdramatic reaction, as he calls it now. He wasn't thinking clearly at all, just reacting.
But then, the next day, he makes a conscious choice.
To think straight. That's the key phrase. He deliberately decides to push aside all that useless mush, the worry, the stress, the what-ifs.
And focus on just one thing.
One single useful thought. Find a solution. Right now. That's the only useful purpose.
And when he did that...
The answer was obvious. Simple. Book an Airbnb for the short term. Which he did. And ironically, he ended up getting the original apartment later anyway.
It just highlights how completely pointless all that initial fretting was.
Totally useless. And it really makes you pause and ask yourself, how often do I get stuck in that kind of unproductive, spinning my wheels thinking when faced with a problem?
When a practical solution might be right there if I just focused.
Exactly. And he emphasizes this change for him wasn't one lightning bolt moment. It was more like a series of problems piling up until he just hit a point of enough?
Enough of the suffering caused by his own runaway thoughts.
Yeah, enough is enough. Which raises a really important question. How do we actually translate these philosophical ideas into practical day-to-day methods?
Because people have been talking about mastering thoughts for centuries, right?
Yeah.
Since ancient Greece.
Absolutely. And the book notes there's a common thread. The mind is a tool for solving problems.
And the quality of your thoughts dictates the quality of your life.
Right. Think of Socrates, always questioning. I know one thing. That I know nothing. That constant inquiry is a thinking method.
Or Descartes, doubting everything to find certainty. I think, therefore I am, questioning the source of beliefs.
And back to William James and pragmatism focusing on outcomes, consequences, facts. Does this thought serve a useful purpose? If not, maybe it's just useless noise.
It reminds me of that Henry Ford quote the book uses.
Oh yeah, which one?
Thinking is the hardest work there is, which is probably the reason why so few engage in it.
Yes. It takes real effort, this intentional thinking.
But it's crucial, because our decisions come from our thoughts. Good thoughts, better decisions, better life.
So how do we actually do it? The book gets into navigating a reality, which often isn't the straight line we expect.
Like his assumption that a degree automatically means a job.
Right. Reality check. Skills matter more. Or building a business, it's never A to B. It's full of detours, failures. Understanding that helps you plan better, have backups.
He uses that real estate example, too. Can't afford London or Amsterdam. Okay, don't just give up. Look at the facts elsewhere.
His hometown, right. Lower prices, growth potential. He found a practical solution by questioning the conventional wisdom and looking at the data. There's usually more than one way to get where you want to go.
So, questioning assumptions, looking at facts. What else?
Connecting the dots. Our brains do this naturally, linking bits of information.
Steve Jobs, right. You can only connect the dots looking backward.
But you have to trust they will connect. The practical part is actively creating those dots. Learn things, do things, mess up, reflect. Feed your brain input so it can generate useful output later.
And with so much input these days, you absolutely have to filter.
Definitely. Filter your thoughts. We use mental shortcuts, heuristics all the time, trial and error, following the crowd, sticking to what's familiar.
But the book argues those shortcuts can actually lead us astray. Keep us stuck in boring habits just because they're comfortable.
Yeah, they're not always practical in the long run. So he suggests that pragmatic filter. Will the outcome of this decision actually change the way I live?
To focus your energy on what really matters.
Exactly. Cut through the noise. Like his decision to move back home instead of chasing the big city dream in London. It wasn't the conventional path, but it worked for him. That's the filter in action,
Do what works for you.
which often means actively stopping the useless thoughts that clog up the works.
This feels like a huge one. He's really honest about how much mental energy gets wasted.
He estimates, 99% of his past thoughts were just useless.
Right.
Worrying, stressing, rehashing things. A preoccupied mind.
Think about all those examples. Wondering what people think of you, fear of failure,
Yeah.
relationship what-ifs, comparing yourself.
Constantly judging yourself or others. Ask the question, what's the practical use?
Usually. None.
Right. And he's clear you can't just stop thoughts from appearing. They'll pop in.
But you choose which ones to engage with.
Exactly. You choose which ones to follow through on, to give energy to. It's about awareness. First, notice the thought. Acknowledge it. Don't beat yourself up for having it, and then decide. Ignore or engage.
He talks about the thought of quitting things still popping up for him.
Yeah, sometimes it's a real signal, but often it's just fear. He's trained himself not to automatically give in to it if it feels like a useless, fear-based thought.
And that framework of inside versus outside your control seems super helpful here.
It's a great rule of thumb. Can I actually control this? My
Wow.
desires, my actions, my words, my intentions, yes. Pretty much everything else, the past, the future, what others think, nope.
So most thoughts about things outside our control are.
By definition, useless.
Yeah.
At least from a practical problem-solving standpoint.
He really narrows down useful thinking to just two types, doesn't he?
Basically, yeah. 1, thinking to solve a specific problem you face. And 2, thinking to understand knowledge and figure out how to apply it. That's pretty much it.
And if you're spending all your time on the other stuff,
Yeah.
the useless stuff,
You're just wasting time, energy, life, really. Going mental, as he puts it. Stuck in your head.
so the call to action is strong, commit to stopping it, take the reins.
Which leads to maybe the most challenging idea.
Don't trust your own mind.
Blindly, at least. It feels wrong, but think about it. We know we're illogical. Those cognitive biases are real. Tversky and Kahneman proved it. We all build our own subjective realities.
Like attentional bias, if you feel negative, you literally start noticing more negative things.
Exactly. And that shapes your perception, which drives your actions, which creates your life outcomes. It's a loop.
Or confirmation bias, looking for stuff that just confirms what we already think, ignoring facts that challenge us.
And there are over 100 known biases. So yeah, the author concludes maybe your mind isn't the most reliable narrator all the time. It might even be a bias to think it is.
So don't just decide based on beliefs or what seems obvious or even what science says sometimes, because scientists have biases too.
Right. The suggestion is to aim for a pragmatic, more neutral view. Look at things from different angles. It leads to better informed decisions. Not perfect, maybe, but better than just reacting based on bias.
And he suggests actually looking up lists of biases when you feel stuck.
Yeah, like on Wikipedia or somewhere. Just seeing the name of the bias that might be tripping you up, like sunk cost fallacy or anchoring, can sometimes snap you out of it. It gives you perspective.
Okay, so questioning the mind. What about facts versus truth? That's another interesting distinction he makes.
He really dislikes assumptions because they aren't facts. That example of assuming someone ignored your email.
When you have zero facts about why they haven't replied yet.
Exactly. The pragmatic approach, echoing William James again, is cling to facts and concreteness. Make decisions based on actual data, not just wishful thinking or assumptions.
Like, do you have market research saying people need your product, or are you just assuming they'll buy it?
Big difference. But then what if you don't have the facts? He says, okay, in rare cases, maybe trust your gut. But generally, avoid getting swayed by other people's opinions if they aren't based on facts either.
But then he throws in Nietzsche.
Right. There are no facts, only interpretations, which seems to contradict clinging to facts.
So what's the point there?
I think Nietzsche's point, and how Foroux uses it, is that our experience of reality is always subjective. We interpret everything. There's no way to be 100% sure we're seeing objective reality as it is.
So facts aren't the same as absolute truth.
Exactly. And the surprising benefit, it can save you a ton of energy arguing. If everyone's interpreting reality slightly differently, who's to say who's definitively right, you can let go of needing to convince everyone of your truth.
Focus on what's useful instead, which ties into another key idea. Take your time to think.
Yes, challenge that idea that thinking fast means you're smart.
Derek Sivers's point. Your first reaction is often just old programming or pure emotion.
Right. Real thinking, slow thinking, takes time. Foroux admits his own quick answers used to be terrible because he wasn't actually thinking.
That email example Sivers gave is great. The instant reaction versus the thought-through practical solution, that pause makes all the difference.
And it's okay not to have an instant answer. Saying, I don't know, doesn't make you stupid. It makes you human. It gives you space to actually figure things out properly.
Why worry so much about seeming smart to others when taking time leads to better results?
Exactly. And that extends directly to making decisions. No more quick yes or no on important things.
The business trips, hiring, firing, renovations, stuff that has real consequences.
Or even just saying yes to things way off in the future because they seem far away. Then suddenly it's next week and your schedule is a mess because you didn't think it through.
So the practical step is just pause. Take a day, maybe two. Think it over.
And that requires knowing yourself, right? What are your actual priorities right now? What kind of life are you building? That self-knowledge informs the decision.
Okay, so we're learning to think better, filtering, taking time. But it's not always smooth sailing, is it? The book talks about hitting walls.
Yeah, mental walls. It's inevitable when you're pushing yourself, learning intensely, or tackling big creative projects.
He describes feeling blocked, exhausted, getting headaches.
And realizing those were signals. He was reaching the edge of his current capacity or understanding, hitting a limit.
And hitting a big wall can feel like you should just give up, right? On the book, the business, whatever it is.
Totally. Feels like failure. But the book reframes it. Hitting a wall is actually a good sign. It means you're close to leveling up, close to a breakthrough.
But you don't just bang your head against it harder.
No, that's the key. You recognize the wall, then you step back, take a break, do something completely different. See friends, exercise, zone out with music or a movie. Let your subconscious chew on it while your conscious mind rests.
And then come back with fresh energy.
Exactly. Use that renewed energy to tackle the wall again. He insists it works. The break allows for integration and new perspectives.
Interesting. And he also suggests ways to think differently, not just analytically, like drawing your thoughts.
Yeah, tapping into visual thinking, like Da Vinci's notebook, sketches, and images were part of his thinking process.
It gets you out of that constant internal chatter.
Foroux says he draws visuals for his blog posts, forces him to clarify ideas. He even started the book with a drawing chaos to clarity. It's another tool in the thinking toolbox.
And underpinning all of this is self-knowledge. Descartes.
Yeah.
Conquer yourself rather than the world.
You have to ask those deep questions. What am I actually good at? Bad at? How do I learn? What drives me? What do I hate? Who am I?
Because if you don't know yourself,
you make bad choices. Wrong job, wrong partner, chasing goals that don't actually fit you. He gives examples like being with someone who loved constant travel when he craved a home base. They weren't aligned.
So step one is know yourself. Step two is act on it.
Right. When opportunities pop up, ask, is this really me? Most things, he argues, probably aren't for you. Focus on the few that truly align.
And that self-knowledge doesn't just appear. You need to reflect.
Take time to reflect. It's so easily squeezed out by busyness. He links his own past crisis directly to not reflecting enough.
He noticed that smart, happy people often have a reflection practice, like journaling.
So he started doing it daily, reviewing weekly. Why? Because it's useful. It helps him spot mistakes, appreciate progress, get thoughts clear, second-guess assumptions, make better decisions. It pays off.
He uses his money rules as an example of rules born from reflection.
Yeah, that friend stuck in a job he hated, feeling trapped by money.
Assuming he needed millions to quit.
The solution wasn't necessarily more money, but changing his thinking about money. Having rules helps devalue its power over you.
Like saving an emergency fund, investing in skills, not buying junk.
Right. And remembering time is more valuable than money. The point is to set up systems based on thought so you don't waste precious mental energy on money all the time.
Okay, so thinking is vital, but is there a point where you can think too much?
Absolutely. The book warns against trying to think your way out of everything.
The shower thoughts idea again. Good ideas often come when you've stopped forcing it.
Exactly. Letting your attention wander, deliberately stopping the act of thinking is also a skill. Knowing when to let go.
And relaxation isn't about needing a special class or app.
Not necessarily. He suggests you can find relaxation anytime, anywhere. Just become aware of your thoughts, observe them, let them drift by without grabbing onto them, find that peace within.
So moments of non-thinking are just as important.
Crucial, which leads to the ultimate goal, action thinking. Good thinking leads to good action.
And how do we make that bridge smoother? Habits and systems.
Take thinking out of the equation for routine stuff. His exercise example is perfect. He used to overthink it constantly.
Should I run, gym, what workout? All thinking, no doing.
So he made a simple system, 30 minutes daily, don't kill yourself, eat okay, track it, boom, no more daily debate. Just do the system. Only think about it if it stops working or needs tweaking.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Using thinking strategically, not constantly. Thinking about regrets is another angle he explores.
Yeah, that lesson from his grandmother regretting what you didn't do. It pushed him to question conventional desires.
Like feeling you should want to travel the world 24/7 just because it looks good on Instagram.
Right. You might need to try things like starting that business to know if it's truly for you. Don't just follow the herd.
And be willing to prioritize. Maybe live simply to fund what you truly desire instead of being miserable in a high-paying job you hate. Think straight to know your priorities, then act.
And part of acting is focusing on the present. Never look back, or at least don't dwell there.
He's not big on tons of photos or nostalgia, prefers being present.
Yeah, he sees clinging to the past, even physical stuff, as potentially holding you back now.
But looking back isn't always bad, right? There's a useful way.
To learn. That's the only useful purpose he sees. Reviewing past thoughts and decisions, especially when things went wrong, to understand why and avoid repeating mistakes.
Like his failed membership site. He didn't just say, oh, well, it failed.
No, he analyzed it pragmatically afterwards. Why did people leave? How much work was it really? Was it the right fit for him right now?
And realized it wasn't, based on his other commitments. Pull the plug quickly based on that clear thinking.
The lesson learned was about maybe needing to think through the details even more upfront, which connects to another big point.
Think about the details even more. That $150,000 email mistake must have hurt.
Ouch. Yeah, taught him the hard way. Details matter. The devil is in the detail.
Something he admits he used to rush past. Impatience.
Now he sees attention to detail as just doing your job properly. He uses writing the book as an example, 15 months, endless revisions, agonizing over the title.
And the title, Think Straight itself, showed details matter. People responded to its clarity.
It's about craftsmanship, really. Revisiting details is how you grow. If you're not willing to do that, maybe don't bother starting.
So it all circles back to how we use our time, our attention.
Spend your time well. It's limited. Your mind is the instrument. Use it for effective thoughts that lead to effective actions.
Like thoughts about improving things, solving problems, planning good stuff.
Not thoughts spent on complaining, self-pity, worrying endlessly.
And staying in that effective mode takes practice. Daily practice.
He frames life itself as the training ground. You have to keep at it.
Because the alternative is just drifting, missing out, not even noticing the good small things.
Yeah, missing the sunshine, the coffee smell, just being present because your mind is always somewhere else, caught in useless loops.
So sometimes the call is just stop thinking, start feeling. Be here now.
Which leads to the ultimate goal he proposes, inner calm.
The ability to stay centered no matter what's happening externally.
That's mastery. And he believes it's achievable through simple, consistent daily practice. Meditation, mindfulness. It doesn't have to be complex.
Just cultivating that awareness, that ability to observe thoughts and let them go. Anytime, anywhere, you control your mind.
And finally, this isn't just about personal peace. Thinking effectively can also be about meaning, about contributing something beyond yourself.
That story about William James crediting Pierce for pragmatism.
Even though Pierce was struggling, James used his influence to lift up a friend, to ensure Pierce got the recognition he deserved. It was an act of thinking beyond himself.
And James's quote ties it together. The greatest use of a life is to spend it on something that will outlast it.
Finding meaning by creating things, doing things that are useful and matter to others. When you do that, he suggests, life automatically gains meaning for everyone involved.
Wow. Okay, so that's a lot to take in from Think Straight.
Yeah.
We've gone through the power of focus, the need for practicality, questioning our own minds, balancing thought and action. What does this all mean for you listening right now? How do you start applying this?
Well, if you zoom out, this whole journey of thinking straight, it's really about becoming more intentional, isn't it? Making better choices, finding more peace day to day. And the core message is really hopeful. You can improve how you think. You have that ability.
And if you improve your thinking,
You improve your life. It's a direct link.
so we really encourage you to sit with these ideas. Which ones sparked something for you? What's one small, practical thing? Maybe filtering your thoughts for usefulness, or taking an extra day on a decision, or starting a 5-minute reflection habit. What could you try this week?
Because that's what these bookish dives are all about, right? Finding those actionable insights.
Exactly. And if you enjoyed diving into Think Straight with us, there are definitely more books like this we could explore together.
Absolutely. So make sure you follow Bookish Dives for more explorations of insightful reads.
Now, here's something to chew on. The book makes a really strong case for controlling thoughts, focusing only on the useful and controllable. But let's be real, how hard is that day to day? When chaos hits or emotions flare up or those old habits kick in? What's maybe one daily practice, just one, that you think could make the biggest difference for you in building that muscle of clearer, more useful thinking?